Hey, what's up, dude?
Nothing, dude. Just trying to get ready for this podcast. So I talked to John and Ryan. They want to do the DC roundtable thing. Are you cool with that? Like, I know it's kind of last minute, but with all this Michael Keaton news, I think we probably should.
Dude, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing another. Like, I don't want to talk. Dude, how many times are we going to talk about DC?
I mean, we did just do that roundtable. Then we talked about the fandom stuff, but like, it is in the news. There's just not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, well, it's just I don't want to talk about. Like, dude, it's in the news. Like, in talks is not really news. I just think it's like DC. Dude, the podcast is supposed to be fun, and talking about DC constantly is not fun. Like, DC's stupid. The movies aren't good. We just had a whole episode about Justice League I don't even know why we did that episode about Justice League. And we talked about how awful it is and how dumb it is and how stupid Aquaman is. And I don't want to keep that's not what we started the podcast for. We didn't start the podcast so we could just keep talking about these stupid movies that we all fucking hate. Like, it's annoying. I don't want to talk about DC anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but it's just like, I mean, it's Michael Keaton. He's coming back to Batman. Like, we have to talk about it. Like, I mean, you're excited about Michael Keaton coming back to Batman, right?
Could this be the end of YHS Podcast? Tune in next week to find out.
I don't want to grow up. Mom, do you want some?
Jurassic Park, now playing the PS7.
Ecto goggles with Ecto Bomber, Neutron Blaster, and Water Zapper, each sold separately.
From the corner penthouse of Spook Central all the way to Star Killer Base, this is Yes Have Some Podcast.
You like? Yes, have some. Yes, have some.
You know, they told me you people were conceited douchebags.
The only place in the multiverse where you can love the book, hate the movie, but still buy all the toys.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
A what?
Please remember to hold on to your butts and get ready to get stressed. With your hosts, Craig Goldberg, Abigail Gardner, and Jacob Walsh.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Yes Have Some Podcast. My name is Craig Goldberg, and I am with Abigail Gardner.
What's up, y'all?
And no Jacob Walsh. He is on assignment this week. And but we do have a couple guests that we're going to throw to here in just a moment. But I'm very excited about tonight. We're talking about something I didn't think was ever going to happen in my lifetime. Actually, I did think it was going to happen. Which means I was right. My predictions have all come true. Mm-hmm. And anybody who listens to Yes Have Some Podcast knows that I am never right. And I'm hyperbolic sometimes. But I have had feelings about I feel like I'm like, am I burying the lead?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
Jake doing the Lord's work.
Oh, okay. So more about the Lord's work.
More about that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead before we even get to our topics tonight. Get to our special guests.
Good
I can't
idea.
even call them guests. If there was ever an extension, this is Yes Have Some's arms, our two arms.
Mm-hmm. Our emergency contacts.
Yes, they are. All the way from Arizona. I don't know what city you're in. Are you in Phoenix, John Yurcaba?
Yeah, we could just call it Phoenix. I live in a suburb of Phoenix, about 10 or 15 minutes away from downtown, called Chandler. But yeah, we could just, we'll call it Phoenix.
Chenandler Bong, Arizona. John was supposed to be with us for our DC roundtable a couple weeks ago. So this is like a little bit of a makeup. This is an opportunity for John to say whatever it is.
To share some of those copious notes that you took.
Yeah, so many notes.
I went kind of hard on that.
Yeah, but
we
it's
respect
good.
it. No,
you can. It's like when a movie falls apart and then there's all these scripts that they haven't used and then they just piece them all together.
It's like his own Snyder
I'll
cut.
link my notes. Yeah.
It was John's original vision for the podcast.
Yes. And joining us from Vancouver, British Columbia area. Is that what?
Well, you should research and know where your friends live.
I know where they live. He's from Canada. Ryan Doell. What's up, dude?
Uh-huh.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Ryan.
No, everything's awesome. We're here. We're going to talk some shit.
We are going to talk some shit.
So much.
So we are going to be talking about the DC news that dropped this week. We talked a little bit about Fandom last week, and I definitely want to pick your guys' brains on that because you were not on the podcast last week. So we're turning into the YHS DC pod.
That's what quarantine has done to us.
Yes.
All DC all the time.
It's
the
one
DC
universe
Yes
in
Have
the
Some
YHS
universe?
multiverse.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, there we
There
go.
it is.
There it is.
Yes,
There it is.
That's it.
And then later on, we'll all have a conversation about taking turns. No, this is good.
No, that was actually the multiverse happening. They were both
They were
happening
both
at the same
projecting.
two different universes.
That was John Yurcaba coming out of that what movie is that in when the Flash just appears out of nowhere? Is that in Dawn of Justice?
What?
Where he disappears?
No, he doesn't disappear.
Out of nowhere?
Like,
Oh, you're talking about Batman versus Superman.
Yeah,
where
he
just
shows
kinda
up.
Shows
Oh,
up in
yeah.
the Batcave while Bruce
Was
is
it
like,
too soon? I was too soon.
like, fuck off, Barry. I'm on Pornhub.
I love that I refer to Batman vs Superman as Dawn of Justice. It's such a dumb, stupid thing. I'm the only one.
You're very formal.
I respect it.
Well, before we get to the news, so the news that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on plugs and housekeeping and all that. If you're listening to this, you know.
Yeah,
You know what to do.
Group therapy.
They're aware, Craig.
Yeah, they're aware.
Yeah.
Speaking of they're aware, never mind. I'm not going to go there. We'll talk after. We'll talk later.
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, cool. So, John, you were not with us for the DC roundtable where we talked about the Snyderverse, but just to catch up, I want to throw to you first. What is your prior to the news, and I guess I can finally reveal what I've been alluding to. Michael Keaton is returning to the role of Batman, and that is going to happen in the Flashpoint movie that is going to go behind cameras next year, directed by Andy Muschietti, who did It Chapters 1 and 2, and it's really exciting stuff. But before we get that, John, before that news broke, sum up your thoughts on the current DC extended universe on film and how you've been feeling about that. Because I know you've been feeling.
You got some feelings.
I've had some feelings for sure. It's been tough because you sit back and you watch Marvel and you can rank their films as to which one is the best and which one is the worst, but by and large, all of them are very watchable. All of them do the characters justice, and they're enjoyable. They've all been successful at the box office, and even the ones that we consider failures within the MCU, they're not failures by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's tough to see DC struggle so much, especially when you can look at their animated series, their animated films, some of their TV shows. They know how to do their characters right. And it's been so tough to have loved those characters. I mean, some of the first comics I ever read were about Batman and Superman, and I have a huge connection to those characters. And to see them just not translate to the big screen the way that you want them to, it sucks, because for a lot of people, the movie version of a character, if you're not watching TV shows or cartoons or reading the comics or anything, the movie version of a character from any Marvel, DC, whatever, is the one that everyone kind of looks to as the beacon. That is the version that they reference. That is what that character is to them. And so for a lot of people now, they think about Superman snapping necks and Batman being a jerk who brands people and wants to kill Superman. And Lex is a whiny hipster. And there's all these things that are just, they feel out of place and misguided. And sure, you can look at every one of their movies and go okay, well, that was cool. And that scene was really nice. And that was pretty well done. And a lot of the actors that they've cast in these roles are great, but just none of them have hit in a way that from beginning to end, you're just okay, that was good. I think the best was probably Wonder Woman, and I think they all did really well. I feel like the third act kind of falls apart, and I think if you were to put Wonder Woman in the DCU, or put Wonder Woman as a film in the MCU, it would probably rank somewhere in the bottom third.
You know what's interesting? We've talked about this a lot, but one thing that's, when we growing up, there was no presence. Like, we're all around the same age bracket. John, you might be a couple years younger than us, but we're all in our 30s, and we all grew up in the 90s, basically. So, there was no Marvel presence on film. All there was, and there really wasn't a huge DC presence. It was basically Batman. That was the only superhero franchise. So
we got lucky toward the middle and end of the 90s when we really had like the animated series from Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, Superman, and all that kind of stuff. And that was when it really started to gain some more momentum than just the comics and then like the Keaton and Reed films.
Right.
But even back in the 90s, people were talking about Superman on a regular basis. Like, since they did the Death of Superman, I don't even think since Death of Superman has the Superman comic books been in the mainstream anything. And no one's really talked about them since. Everyone just kind of gets comfortable. They're there. That's your, it's cozy to know that Superman is still on the shelves. But, it's no one's really talked about it since then. Right.
Yeah. And John mentioned Lois and Clark, and then Smallville. So like they're like DC had has always had kind of an edge over Marvel when it comes to TV properties. But it's just crazy now that we're talking about, Michael Keaton returning to Batman. And I don't know, I want to throw to you guys, and Ryan, I'll start with you. Just even beyond that, for context, I've never read the Flashpoint crossover. We did watch the animated Flashpoint Paradox. I didn't finish it.
I was gonna say most of it. We went back to finish it, and for some reason, Prime wasn't.
I didn't think it was great. Like, the story's pretty cool, but overall, I thought it was fine.
I have intentions of finishing it.
But Ryan, are you surprised that? So basically, to set the table, they're kind of. They've been hinting at more or less a soft reboot of the DC extended universe, and they're going to use the Flashpoint storyline to do that and kind of reset the stage. Are you surprised by that? And do you think that's a good move in general?
I think it's dumb. I think the whole thing is dumb. It's I think it's the most stupidest direction that DC can go with this. This is the equivalent of being like having Captain America's first movie being Civil War.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
We don't give it, like, imagine if Marvel started with that and just said, hey, Cap's first movie is going to be Civil War. It's going to make no sense.
Well, they've already,
we don't
this
care.
is DC's track record though, because the current Batman, or the Ben Affleck Batman,
he didn't have his own solo movie before.
Yeah, it was
like bam, right?
Yeah, it was an introduction to a character that is already lost Robin and has already battled the Joker and Penguin and is at an older point in his life. And so this is not like uncharted territory for DC on film.
I think this movie is just going to be a waste of our time, like, just to even watch it, because I think it's pointless. I think if they're going to reboot it, just reboot it. Who cares?
Right.
Like, nobody's invested enough to give a shit whether or not this universe gets rebooted.
I don't know. There's some people on Twitter I read every day that there's some version of the tweet that goes, can we at least admit that Jesse Eisenberg is the absolute best portrayal of Lex Luthor that we will ever get? Like, it's I see that all the time.
But those people are getting catered to. Those people are getting HBO Max.
Yeah.
So let them have their HBO Max.
I thought it was GB Max. Where did I get HBO Max from?
Isn't it HBO? What's it called? What do you guys call it?
Yeah, HBO Max.
We love you, Superman.
We love HBO. Yeah. Superman is a genius.
HBO Max is GB Max from an alternate universe.
Yeah, HBO Max.
I love you, Ben Affleck.
HBO Max is Flashpoint GB Max, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. So I still think, I think this movie is a waste of time. I just don't think we care. I don't care. I'm probably not going to see this in theater.
Bullshit.
Unless they announce
Fuck
Michelle
you.
Pfeiffer.
Bullshit.
You'll see it.
Unless they announce Michelle Pfeiffer.
Ryan did not see Aquaman.
Ryan, we're gonna come to Canada and do a double feature, so you can watch Aquaman, and then we'll all go to the theater to watch Flashpoint.
So before
God,
this is what I want to know.
Toy traders instead.
All right, Michael Keaton Batman. People have a genuine affection for Batman 89 and Batman Returns. So basically, I was not surprised to read that Michael Keaton was coming back. There's always been kind of murmurs and rumblings of a possible Batman Beyond movie. And after they announced the Snyderverse or the Snyder Cut stuff, and then the Robert Pattinson Batman's still happening, and who cares? Fine, sure. I'm not surprised that they're going to have multiple. There was already multiple versions of Batman happening, and there's already, there's the Joker movie, which might get another Batman. So I'm not surprised that they're doing this. I'm a little bit surprised that they're introducing him. Like, I feel like there's more equity for Warner Brothers in just saying we're doing a new Batman movie that takes place in that original universe and make it a solo Batman film. Whether or not they adapt The Dark Knight Returns, which they probably shouldn't because they keep doing that over and over. We get it. He's older now. But food for thought, Abigail.
Yeah.
What's your experience with the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and how do you feel about him returning to that role, knowing that this doesn't always work, right? We're in this mode of bringing back, Han Solo, Indiana Jones.
Yeah. I don't think it would work
Ghostbusters, Bill and Ted.
I think it's going to work. I don't think it would work with Val Kilmer, obviously, but I think that with Michael Keaton that he's...
Yeah, and also I don't think
that's even
that wasn't on. That's not happening at the Warner Brothers boardroom, guys.
I can't start that rumor.
Yeah. We're bringing back Val.
As much as I love Batman Forever, no. I actually was watching 89 and Returns today on VHS when I was hanging out in our room today, and I love those movies. As much as I love Batman Forever, I'd have to say that 89 is probably I think the pinnacle and the best Batman movie, probably number one. I think that Michael Keaton has a sense of humor, and he plays off I feel like he's the least traumatized and least I feel like the other Batmans always have so much extra shit, and I kind of can't all the brooding. I just can't deal with. But Michael Keaton, I think, brings a likability to it.
I love that Batman. I can't deal with the brooding.
Just calm, Michael Keaton seems to be enjoying his life as Bruce Wayne, millionaire.
Yeah.
Well, in Batman 89, he's in his comfort zone, right? Because that movie only takes place within 2 city blocks.
2 backlot city blocks. John, what is your history with the Michael Keaton Batman movies? When were you exposed to them, and what do you feel about them in 2020?
I think they're enjoyable. I was not as big into superheroes when I was young, single digit age range. I honestly didn't get fully into comics until right before I started high school. And so the comics, as far as Batman and a lot of those characters go, were my first exposure to that. And that was just a few years before Batman Begins hit. And so it's, I have seen those plenty of times. I think they're a lot of fun. To me, they feel like really good Tim Burton movies. It's hard for me to enjoy them as really good Batman movies, not because I don't think they're good, but just because so much of what I know and love about Batman, for me personally, I don't feel it in those films. To me, Michael Keaton is classic. I love the idea of him coming back to do new Batman related stuff. My money would have been on him coming back as an older Bruce Wayne in a Batman Beyond movie. So this is kind of a surprise to me, but I mean, obviously he brings that nostalgia and he brings a lot. He brings people back in who maybe have been I'm not into the more recent DC stuff, but people who love his version of Batman and who love him as an actor, absolutely, they're going to hear this and be like, okay, now you have my attention again. So I can understand, given DC's recent track record, why they would be like, what can we do to get people to want to invest in what we're creating again?
Yeah.
So I'm into it. I definitely, like you were saying, Kilmer, I don't think would have been a good choice. I don't think Clooney would have worked. And I think Christian Bale, he probably wouldn't have wanted to do it. But also, even if he did, he's too recent. Like he is the last memorable Batman other than Ben Affleck, and it wasn't too long ago, so it wouldn't have really made sense.
Calling it now, post-credit scene, Christian Bale gonna set the world on fire.
Ron,
wait, what was that, John?
We're gonna get into the Batverse.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Everybody gets a verse.
Yeah.
Everyone gets to say that what their feelings are towards Keaton.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know, Ryan, you've got a deep love for Batman and Batman Returns, specifically Michelle Pfeiffer, and
yes,
let's keep this NC-17.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, and I can. This will be easy to keep NC-17. So, so my first introduction to Batman was not even Batman 89. It was the Superpowers toys. When I got a Batman on short card from the Shell station when my dad went to go get gas. And that was my first introduction to Batman. So then to go from that and then into 89, being 9 years old, it was a very, very exciting time. Like, it was just super exciting. And then by the time a year later, that's when I started getting into comics, mostly because of the Tim Drake Robin design. And that was kind of Tim Drake was my gateway into DC and into the comic book Batman universe. Then Returns came out. I realized I had hormones. And then by that time I was so big into comics and so big into interested in Robin and that, and, more his side characters. Mm-hmm. So that when Batman Forever came out and we were finally getting Robin, it was probably the most excited I can remember being for a movie since the first Jurassic Park movie.
Wow. So
it was very, very exciting. And then Batman and Robin came out. I was also excited. I came out a little jarred. Because I wasn't prepared.
How did Forever make you feel? Did Chris O'Donnell, did he deliver on your expectation of Robin in Batman Forever, or was it a little bit of a letdown?
You know what? I was starving. I was 16 and starving for anything Robin.
Right.
And the only time we got Robin, it would be in
16.
We wouldn't even know. He wasn't even in Batman the Animated Series in every episode. He would just show up surprisingly back then as well. So it was always a big deal when Robin showed up.
That's how I always felt about the Batman 66 when the credits would roll. And you'd be like, please be a Batgirl episode. Please be a Batgirl episode. And then you would just be like, boom, skipping school today. Let's do this.
Very exciting.
I could relate to that.
Yeah,
but as I got older, I realized that maybe Chris O'Donnell was maybe a little too old to be playing that specific Robin.
Yeah.
But that's here nor there.
Plus,
we're talking about Keaton right now.
I didn't know where he was going to go. Because the circus must be halfway to Metropolis by now. What?
Yeah. That was such an exciting line.
I was so excited.
It was so exciting.
That was the true dawn of justice right there.
Yeah. Right? And that got and if you watch Returns and you watch Forever back to back, they blend over actually quite nicely. They actually do feel like they're connected, where Batman and Robin doesn't, but it does. I don't know. It's weird, but
so that's a good
Returns and Forever blend together pretty well.
That's a good segue. So one thing we should mention that really sad. Joel Schumacher passed away, just completely ironically the same day that all this stuff was being announced, and he, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but he had an incredible career. He did some amazing movies. He did The Lost Boys. He did St. Elmo's Fire and A Time to Kill. So much great stuff, and obviously Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. They specifically said in these articles in the trades that this movie will take place, 30 years after Batman Returns, and they're gonna ignore the events of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, which I understand. But when those movies came out, they were firmly in the same universe, even though they didn't really go too far out of their way, except for there's that one line. I think they maybe allude to Catwoman in Batman Forever at one point. There's like a...
or do I need skin tight vinyl and a whip?
Yes. Yeah. I remember when that happened, I was like, this is my second dawn of justice. But I guess, John, I'll throw to you first. How do you those movies exist and they're going back into that universe. They're doing a little bit of rewriting of history. I don't know. I feel fine with that just because it's 2020 and I'm not going to get hung up on if that's what it takes to get Michael Keaton back, then so be it. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
I always think it's weird when they go out of their way to specifically say these things didn't happen regarding like which sequel they're coming after or which film they're going to kind of make things a sequel to. And because very rarely do I ever feel like whatever sequels they're cutting out are like, have those movies done anything that is just like irreparable? Like if you made another one, you would have to acknowledge everything that happened in those films. And I feel that way with this one, especially because, if you were to count Batman Forever and Batman and Robin as canon, okay, so that means he had a Robin, he had a Batgirl, and he had a few new villains, and Alfred is dead. Mm-hmm. So now you go and you're saying like, okay, well, we're only going to count Batman and Batman Returns, but it's 30 years later. Well, couldn't we not assume that he's had a Robin or two, a Batgirl, and that Alfred is dead and he's fought more villains? Like there's no, unless you're specifically going to say like, hey, remember that time when I drove the car up the side of a building? Like there's no reason to get that specific about what happened in those films. Right. So it feels kind of extra to be like, and those don't count because it's like, does it matter?
I'm banking on CGI Michael Gough Alfred as a hologram.
Oh man, see, and that's where
that's Jarvis, where it's like his face on a computer and his voice for someone doing his voice.
Right? You mean like in Batman and Robin?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's all you would have to do.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, clearly I think it's bullshit. Don't be ashamed of what you made. And I mean, Batman has always evolved, and I always thought if they kept those two movies, it would actually almost replicate the comics a little bit, where he goes really dark and, well, actually Robin debuted less than a year after Batman debuted, but that's beside the point. But it's kind of like, you have your dark Batman, and then he gets Robin, things get lighter, things get goofy, and then things go back to being dark. And I kind of thought if they kept that, it would you would see that timeline progress in the movies as well. And I thought that would kind of be a fun nod. And they could do no more than just have Batman and the Batman and Robin suit.
Yeah,
in a glass case.
In the cave.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
you don't need anything else.
Gun in there somewhere, like he's got all the weapons stored away.
The trophy room in the Batcave.
Just to legitimize it for fans.
I think the opportunity they're missing is to possibly bring back Jim Carrey as the Riddler.
Yeah,
in some way. And I think
he did survive.
Yeah, and I think
he did survive.
Here's what I would love to see with this because in context, Michael Keaton coming back for Flashpoint, and we're assuming that when Barry goes for his run and Flashpoints to wherever, he's basically going to be in the world of Michael Keaton Batman. And so I think to show a Batman, and weirdly enough, similar to Affleck, who has been through a lot, he's had a career, he's had partners, he's lost partners, he's done all these things, and now he doesn't have that anymore. And here's Barry, who is, as far as the comic and the animated version, ran and created Flashpoint because he was so distraught about not being able to help his dad and save his mom. Now he's faced with a Batman who had all those things and lost them. And there's a opportunity to kind of get Barry's mindset into like, hey, don't take what you do have for granted, being too concerned about what you don't have.
But you lost.
And I think by letting us see all of the things he's been through with like the suits in the cave and characters that have died or moved on or all the things he's done, that just adds more texture to that. That gives more weight to whatever Bruce might say in terms of like, Barry, don't take what you have for granted. Right.
One thing, so, I'm not an expert on Flashpoint or PowerPoint, as I kept calling it. In that storyline, as I am to understand, Flash creates the multiverse, goes back in time, does all that stuff, encounters Batman. The Batman he encounters is a more violent, gun-toting, gray-suited. I like the suit, by the way. That's pretty cool. The rumor had been that it was going to be Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and kind of keeping with the storyline that it would actually be Thomas Wayne. Maybe all of that is still going to happen, but I do not believe that. You know, the thing is, there's a chance that Michael Keaton as Batman in this movie, it might be 5 minutes. Like, we don't know. But I do not believe if they're bringing back Michael Keaton, I don't believe for a second that they're going to make it this weird alternate version of Michael Keaton. Like, I think this will be firmly set in. And so my question to you guys is, how faithful to the comics, or, you know, I guess you guys can answer this. How faithful do you think they should stay to the comics as they adapt Flashpoint? And will we see multiple Batmans? Because I feel like we will.
You want to go first, Ryan?
Sure. I don't think it has to be faithful to the comic at all at this point. Like, if you're already getting Keaton Batman and you're trying to make a multiverse based on the movies you've already made, then just call it Flashpoint Paradox, and that's it. Like, I mean, Marvel does that already as well. Age of Ultron in the comics is completely different. Civil War is different as well. I mean, they can keep the title, that's fine. But I would not expect it to be anything close to the comic, because, I mean, if they're going to keep it close to the comic, we're going to get a whole scene where we get to see Wonder Woman and Aquaman get it on, and then Wonder Woman will cut off Mira's head and dangle it in front of him and saying, "Get this bitch out of the way."
Whoa.
Right?
All right.
Man.
Yeah.
Does that happen in that animated movie?
It's
yeah,
in
man.
The animated movie, yeah.
It's in the animated movie. Imagine Amber Heard's head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amber Heard's head, like Gal Gadot's hands.
Okay.
Like, screw it.
All right.
Cuts to Amber Heard's head, and then it just cuts
Johnny
to
Depp.
fucking Jack Sparrow for some reason.
Right?
Oh,
so
you should let me do that
one. And it would get pretty dark. And I mean, like, it's all about them going to the end of the world and stuff. And what did they say? They said the Keaton world is actually going to be like a mixture between Keaton and Batman Beyond.
Well, I mean, I'm interested to see that Tim Burton Gotham that he set up, what that is 30 years later. I do not foresee that world having any other superheroes besides Batman. I just don't. I don't think this works and is impactful if the Flash encounters Michael Keaton and there's already Cyborg and Superman and all that shit. Like, I think whatever that interaction is, it's going to be. That's just my opinion. Like, I can't base that on anything other than a gut feeling. John, tell me what you're thinking right now in this very moment.
I agree. I think that, I mean, I highly doubt that you're going to go get Keaton and make a big announcement if it's basically just a cameo. I have a feeling that whereas the comic and the animated Flashpoint was all about a Barry Allen who, you know, has been the Flash for a while. He's been in the Justice League for a while. He is a veteran hero, and he's still lamenting that he wasn't able to save his mom and help his dad. And that's kind of what triggers everything. And then he sees, you know, it's less that he creates a multiverse and more that because of going back and saving his mom, it just butterfly affects the entirety of existence. And now he's seeing like, oh my God, instead of Bruce's parents dying, Bruce died, his mom became the Joker, his dad became Bat. Like, everything is just messed up now, and it's coming to a head in this giant war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, and everything's going to hell. And I think instead of doing the Thomas Wayne angle with him as Batman, I think by doing it with Keaton, I think I read this in, the Hollywood Reporter mentioned that there's an angle that they want to play with of Keaton coming back and being the Batman going forward, or at least the Bruce Wayne, and treating him sort of as like a Nick Fury for the DC universe, and that he's like the elder statesman who watches over the younger heroes and maybe trains Batgirl, because that is one of the films they've been trying to get off the ground for a while.
That's dumb too.
Well, there's aspects of that is dumb, but I think I've been trying to rack my brain. They're going to do the Snyder Cut, right? Which it'll either be great or bad or somewhere in the middle, but I feel like that will be Ben Affleck's last time we see Ben Affleck as Batman, right? So, but it's hard to have an ongoing DC universe if they plan on it without Batman. And then we've got the Robert Pattinson movie that's being made by Matt Reeves, and obviously that is completely separate from all of this. So this is a really interesting way to still have Bruce Wayne and be doing something completely different with that character that is unmistakable. Most people, some people will be confused. There's going to be some muggles, as Ryan would say, that are not going to understand what's happening. But as far as Abby, as far as like the Nick Fury thing, like, do you buy, like, I don't think anybody
seeing Michael Keaton's Batman as in that role.
I just like, if you're bringing back Michael Keaton as Batman, you got to at least give him one or two adventures as Batman.
Yeah.
You just have to.
I think that's what Flashpoint will be for. I think when Barry
Nick Fury does stuff
runs
too.
into him, he'll see him in like some kind of suit that lets him still function as a fighter in the field. Kind of like when Batman Beyond starts, you see Bruce and he's wearing the Batman Beyond suit because he's old and he's arthritic and he's broken, and that suit lets him function. And so I have a feeling that we'll kind of get, his last glory moments as Batman actively in Flashpoint, and then he'll come back to the main universe and kind of retire his field duty, so to speak.
Right. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the Nick Fury, the quote unquote Nick Fury mentor angle?
What a waste of Batman. Batman's like DC's guy. Like, as much as like Superman as I want Superman to be DC's guy, and he is for us comic readers. But let's face it, when you go out to when you put your comic book down and you look out in the real world, it's fucking Batman. It's Batman everywhere. Batman is their centerpiece. And then you're gonna like put him on the sidelines coaching? That's bullshit to me. And it's like, and I understand they probably do want to do the Batman Beyond thing, then just make a Batman Beyond movie. Just make sure there's a Batman. And even since they said they're going to do Batgirl, they're not going to even be doing Batman Beyond. So it's not even going to be Terry McGinnis. It's going to end up being Dark Knight Returns, The Golden Child, where it's Carrie Kelly in the Batsuit, which is fine. But again, they're just going back to what's in the well from Frank Miller, when there's so many other artists and writers they can go to that have told better stories, to be honest. At this point, it's not the 80s anymore. We've had, close to 40 years of amazing Batman stories. And they keep going back to that same well, that same writer, that same artist. And don't get me wrong, I have the utmost respect for Frank Miller and what he's done for comics. But I think it's time to put the spotlight on some other creators and some other versions of Batman. I think this is such a waste. I honestly do. I think this is really disappointing in a lot of ways. Like, I'm still stoked to see Keaton back, but he's just going to sit there with a turtleneck. He's going to be sitting there DJing his CDs and making them skip, right? Like,
it's interesting. I think about Suicide Squad too, because obviously that Suicide Squad is the next movie in the DC universe that is part of the rooted in the Batman mythos. As far as I understand, obviously Margot Robbie's in it as Harley Quinn, so that's pretty connected to Batman if my sources are right. I wonder though. That movie's shrouded in mystery. We don't know anything. There's all these people in it. We don't even know who they're playing. Nathan Fillion's in it, and
John Cena,
yep.
and Pete Davidson, and they won't say who anybody's playing. So like, it kind of makes me feel like that movie's just going to be kind of a standalone thing, and it kind of doesn't matter if it's rooted in the DC extended universe or something completely separate of it. They're already saying it's not a reboot, it's not a sequel. Like, so they're trying to make sense of DC's plan is ridiculous, because John, you and I were talking about the other day, and I kind of want you to talk about this, about how it seems like DC is kind of backed into this multiverse thing, but there's no way, like, there's no architecture here. They didn't plan this at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say their plan is a result of not planning.
Yeah, no, 100%. What sucks is that I think, and I know like DC fans hate when you try to compare their films to Marvel and vice versa or whatever, but like one thing that I appreciate about Marvel is that they have somebody at the top with Kevin Feige who looks at all the properties, sits down with writers, with people from Marvel Comics, with filmmakers, and they figure out like, what is this arc? What is this phase about? Who do we need to get to the big film at the end of the phase? Who do we need for Avengers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? What are our stops along the way? And they have a plan, and they might not necessarily have every script written before they even shoot one frame of the first film, but they have a general idea of like, okay, cool. We're going to start with Iron Man. That's going to lead to Hulk. Then we'll have Iron Man 2. Like they know how to get there. And then they hire the people along the way. And like we saw with Edgar Wright on Ant-Man, he came in and they talked and he kind of got into the creative process. And they realized as they were talking that out, it started to feel more like an Edgar Wright film than it did a Marvel film. And at that point, Marvel and Wright shook hands and said, hey, we appreciate everything. We've enjoyed collaborating with you. We've got to keep this a Marvel film. And it was an amicable way to part. And even Edgar Wright will be like, no, I love Marvel. They did their thing. I was going closer to some of my own solo films and tone, and they wanted to keep it Marvel. And I respect that. And they know that even though, yes, each film stands alone and each film maybe has a little bit of a different tone or a different vibe or a different whatever, they're all Marvel films and they're all telling one Marvel story. Mm-hmm. And everybody that comes on board is in service of that. DC, I think at the root of all of their creative decisions or non-decisions is this idea of like, how do we be different from Marvel? And the thing that sucks is instead of relishing in who their characters are and letting them stand on their own, they're so concerned about, you know, how do we tonally be different from Marvel? How do we visually be different from Marvel? How do we whatever? And it's just leading to a lot of really unfortunate, like, warped hot takes on who these characters are and like deconstructing them when they don't need to be. And it's like they've forced themselves into a position where they have, like they've said in interviews, our goal is to hire a creator, a director with a vision, and then just give them carte blanche to see that vision through. But then if that's your goal, you need to own that. And if you're going to let Zack Snyder or whoever make a Superman movie, let him make a Superman movie, let him cast who he wants, and let him just do his thing for 1, 2, 3, however many films. And then you want to make a Wonder Woman movie, make a Wonder Woman movie, but don't try to force those two things to cross over. Let there be a Superman universe. Let there be a Wonder Woman universe. If you want to hire someone to do a Justice League, let him cast all new versions of those characters. Just let your directors do their thing. And that's not me advocating saying Snyder should have, you know, done whatever he wanted. But I do think if you're going to try and build your films as these standalone character studies, you have to let them be that. And then if you want a Justice League, let someone come along and do a standalone Justice League film or film series, because you can't expect everyone to like, you can't tell them, hey, do your own thing. But then when you're done, we're just going to mash them up and expect everyone to be on board with it. Mm-hmm. And it sucks now because I think there's like, it's comic books, whether you want to do it on film or not. Everybody loves reading solo Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, whoever comic books, and then seeing them come together for Crisis on Infinite Earths or Kingdom Come or whatever big event stories are happening. And they're going to want to see that on film too.
Right.
And so it's like they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Well, you got to earn those.
Yeah,
you got
story needs to trump all. Like you need to know what's going on beforehand and have that kind of structure everything. I think what you were saying, John, I completely agree with you. I feel like if DC were to sit in a therapist's office, a therapist would say that they need to stop trying to be so different from Marvel and just try to be themselves and figure out what makes them great, you know, and celebrate.
I like that.
Because
I like the idea of that.
They've looked at their last few successes in turn, like, you know, the most successful stuff they had before they did Man of Steel was obviously the Christopher Nolan Batman films. And yeah, there's an element of those movies or any Batman movie that you're going to say like, oh, this is dark, it's gritty, it's all about crime and corruption. And you know, it's got like a moody atmosphere to it. but it's supposed to. It's Batman. You don't take that and paste it onto Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash and whoever. That's not your DC universe. That's Gotham. But like, look at the real world. You can go visit a really clean, really nice city where everybody's nice to each other. And then you can go visit a really crappy city where there's lots of crime and corruption. They both exist in the same place. Like you have to find a way to translate that to film.
But I think the biggest issue,
say like everything is like Gotham.
The biggest issue, the reason why
different theme, different mood. Marvel definitely succeeds with that.
Marvel launched their MCU in 2008. The first Avengers movie was in 2012. They earned that first team up. And then, they kept going and going and going. And by the time you get to Endgame, you feel like this is a journey that you as the viewer have been on with these characters. And I'll still say the biggest mistake was after The Dark Knight, when they said, we're going to relaunch, we're going to start with Man of Steel. It has flaws, but you might love or hate it. But Man of Steel, I think people have some decently genuine good feelings about it, despite its flaws.
They don't.
A lot of people do. But what I'm saying, Ryan,
it is what it is. It's a Superman origin story, and it makes a lot of mistakes along the way. But you walk out going, cool, at least we have Superman now.
Well, the mistake that it made was that it tried to be the Batman Begins of Superman. And it just going into this
concept, that's fine. Like Batman Begins here's what's always so silly and weird to me is that when you listen to Christopher Nolan talk about his thought process and how he sat down and sort of hashed out what Batman Begins would be, he always references two things that inspired him the most. One was Blade Runner. He got all of the people on the filmmaking team together and said, tonally, visually, I want it to have kind of a Blade Runner vibe, just obviously not futuristic. And the second is the Richard Donner Superman, because his concern wasn't about making it dark and gritty. His concern wasn't even about making it super realistic. It was about making it true to the world that it was creating. It was about the verisimilitude aspect. And he felt like that first Richard Donner Superman nailed that. That movie's not dark and gritty, but you walk away from it going, okay, that was Superman. The same way you walk away from Batman Begins going, okay, that was Batman.
Right.
And I think the idea of doing
why didn't he do that for Rises?
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
All right.
This is a different episode. That's the episode where we'll do that episode when Jake's here, and it'll just be you guys.
Everyone team up on Craig.
You gonna let him gang up on me?
No,
like
John
that?
likes Star Trek. Fuck you.
I like it too.
Okay.
I didn't even say that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna dogpile.
All right.
I'll help.
I think I got really heated there. I really like Anne Hathaway's Catwoman. When she goes,
I like Tom Hardy. I don't dislike that movie. I understand that there's
I didn't mean you were gonna gang up on me, Abby. I meant if Jake is here,
Jake and
Ryan are gonna come after.
No, it's 3 against 2. I think we can take them.
So listen, hold on. So John, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think maybe DC and Warner Brothers, that's the issue they've been dealing with for a while. And frankly, they've probably wanted to, this Flash movie's been on the slate for a while. Obviously, COVID-19 pandemic released the Snyder Cut. There's things happening. I think out of respect to Zack Snyder and the things he went through personally, and also just the fact that Justice League came out and it was a big floppy, not
flip-flop.
It sucked. Yeah. It just sucked. And it wasn't even like, ooh, I disagree with all the choices in this movie. It sucks. It was like, oh, this is just boring. And it doesn't even feel like Batman vs. Superman. It's just like, it's bland. It's a very bland movie. And your first Justice League movie shouldn't be bland. Yeah. I feel like DC and Warner Brothers feel like, okay, Wonder Woman and Aquaman can kind of exist on their own. We feel like Ezra Miller, I'm assuming it's still going to be him. He did get canceled like 2 months ago, but I don't know if that really caught on. Oh, I don't know if his cancellation.
I want to see the Flash choke some woman in a Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't. We don't want to see that.
Don't.
Ryan does.
Wait, I can. We can just Google it.
Okay. Right. Because it happened.
Yeah.
But so Ryan, Flashpoint, is this the storyline to adapt? And well, we kind of already covered that, but since they are, what would make it great? Like if forgetting the fact that maybe just giving Flash a solo movie that is just a standalone would be okay. We haven't even talked about didn't they do Flashpoint on the TV shows already?
They did.
Yep,
and that
they
was
did.
Actually, they did what kind of Ryan was talking about. Instead of trying to do a straightforward, like, here is every frame of the comic, they took the core of what it was and they said, okay, how would an event like Flashpoint affect what we have built on the show? And they did it pretty well, for me anyway.
Cool. I didn't watch any of it, but I was excited that that Knox was back for that one scene. He's like, I guess we haven't even talked about who from the Burton universe we want to see back. Are we getting Vicky Vale? Are we getting Knox? What's going to happen? I don't think Gordon will be there. Ryan.
Pfeiffer can still crack a whip.
Pfeiffer can do it. Maybe, hey, maybe that's what she was practicing for a year and a half ago. Who knows? Ryan, they're doing Flashpoint. In your mind, what does it need to do to get your stamp of approval and say, okay, that was good? Like, what would you want to see?
It not exist. And
okay,
just gonna
it's so fun podcasting with Ryan.
But anyways, so besides me being just a cheeky bastard,
Austin Powers,
cheeky.
I think what I would just want to see a Flash movie where it is just what we were talking about before, where it's just standalone, where he's just like, hey, it's the Flash versus Mirror Master or Captain Cold or something, or Rainbow Raider, like just have him do an adventure, because we haven't seen him do anything. And so, like, at all, like, he literally learned how to, like, save one person in Justice League. God. And then all of a sudden he's going from that to his own solo movie where he's like zipping through the multiverse. Like, let's just take things back a little bit. Let's centralize it about him. But, they can, I don't know. I just feel like this is just too much. Just make it. I just want something good, and I'm not going to get it. I don't even know why.
Would you be excited? This just dawned on me. Here's my own dawn of justice. What if there is a scene with Michael Keaton's Batman and Henry Cavill's Superman fighting alongside each other? Now that would be something where I would go, you know what? I didn't think I'd ever see this. Like, I wouldn't have won this bet.
Yeah.
And it feels like Henry Cavill's going to stick on as Superman, but they still just haven't figured out how to give him his own movie without it being, whatever. Kevin Costner dying in a tornado for no reason.
Their whole attitude towards Superman is so upsetting. And that's like a whole different story. But literally, like, the story of the lone survivor of a planet that met its doom because the government refused to acknowledge climate change. And then he comes here and becomes a journalist and wants to lift the voices of those who need it and those who are trying to make positive changes. But then everybody is trying to say, hey, journalists suck. So he decides to suit up and try to make positive changes himself, only to be belittled and discredited by a powerful idiot white man with inferiority. I mean, yeah, that's totally not relatable at all. Like,
Yeah, at first I was like, what's John even, was he watching the news?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but like what I'm saying is, same question to you, John. This is happening, right? Flashpoint's happening.
Sure.
What Superman, will he be in it? Who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be, different characters that come in through. And when you're dealing with a multiverse and people traveling through the multiverse, obviously there's a lot that you can do and you can get away with a lot more. I mean, we might see Adam West's Batman. We probably won't, but we might, is what I'm saying. John, what would you want to see, knowing the story, right? So you're familiar with the comic. You watched the WB one. You've seen what would you want to see out of this Flashpoint movie that you would go, okay, that was what they should do?
Let's see. I think honestly, I would need to see. I think the movie would need to start by showing us, because I mean, what, Justice League came out in 2017, right?
Yeah.
And chronologically, that was the last time we saw the Flash. So by the time we get this movie, it'll be 2021, 2022 maybe. So he'll have been the Flash for 4 or 5 years, just being the Flash in that universe. So I think if we start the movie and say like, hey, here's me, Barry Allen. Life has been pretty good so far. I'm dating this girl named Iris. She's great. I'm moving up at the police precinct as a forensic specialist. And I bagged a couple supervillains. Check this out. But you know what? I still haven't been able to help my mom or help my dad. And I wish that I could bring my mom back to life. And then it kind of like, in a really quick and messy way, but like it lets you know, like, okay, this isn't the same guy who didn't know how to save one person. And then have him go through Flashpoint, have him meet Michael Keaton Batman, and, you know, they find a way to reset the universe, go back to Barry's timeline, however you want to do it, and then set him up like as your Nick Fury of the DC universe, I guess. I don't know. Like it's tough because the the best case scenario for what they could create coming out of this DC universe or out of Flashpoint doesn't look like the DC universe I wish they could or would create coming out of Flashpoint, because I would have loved to have seen them do something that not necessarily literally translated the comic, but at least, like, if you were to tell me before all this Michael Keaton stuff, like, John, they're making a Flashpoint movie, how do you want it to go? How do you want it to end? I would stick pretty close to the comic, given what we might have to adjust for what's already happened in the movies. And then at the end, have Barry, you know, run back to fix everything. And then the big moment at the end of both the movie and the film, or the animated movie and the comics, I'm going to spoil it for you guys, is that Flash gets a letter from Thomas Wayne from Batman that he wrote to his son, and Barry takes it back with him through the entire, like, he goes back to where he came from, and you can tell the universe is a little different. Like, things look a little different. Everybody's superhero costumes are a little different. In the comics, this is kind of, they rebooted the original version of the DC universe to the New 52 version, which kind of made everybody a little younger, a little hipper. Their suits changed a little bit. And that's reflected in the movies too. So he takes the note to Bruce, and Bruce reads it and takes off his mask because he's just hanging out in the Batcave, and he looks at Barry. He's like, geez, Barry, you're one hell of a messenger. I would have loved to have seen a Flashpoint movie where that happens, and he brings Bruce the note, and then Bruce turns around and takes off his mask, and it's Robert Pattinson's Batman. And it's just this moment of like, oh, thank God. Everything is one universe again. Screw the Joker movie. I hate it. Nobody needs any more of that. This is it. This is the DC universe, and we're going to try to do it right going forward. So, but this idea, I mean, like, it's tough because I want to see the classic Justice League on screen and done well with Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. But, you know, now it kind of feels like they're trying to put something together that's just going to feel really different. And who knows, it might be really entertaining, but it's not going to be that moment of seeing the Avengers on the big screen for the first time where you're like, yes, that's the lineup, that's the shot, this movie is awesome. This is a great time to be
you know what? I mean, if you think about it though, where Marvel has really succeeded, and DC on film has really struggled, is that obviously Batman and Superman are arguably the two biggest superheroes in the social conscious, right? Like Spider-Man probably number 3. You can make an argument at least. Marvel has successfully injected characters like Captain America and Thor and Ant-Man and so on into the pop culture collective consciousness, where the Guardians of the like, that's where I want to see DC, and maybe that's what's going to happen with Suicide Squad. But the Guardians of the Galaxy went from an unknown, comic fans know it outside of the comic shop and the basement dwellers. Nobody knew who they were, and then James Gunn makes Guardians of the Galaxy, and all of a sudden it's in the social construct. Everybody knows Peter Quill. Everybody knows Rocket and Groot and Gamora and Drax and then even the side characters like Yondu and Mantis and so on. DC,
these characters have a ride at Disneyland.
Yeah. It's crazy to have lived in a time where, when I was growing up and getting into comics and like high school age, like I was still getting made fun of and hearing people talk about how superheroes and comic books were dumb. And now, like, you could probably, like, I'm sure there are high school cheerleaders who know who Nebula and Gamora and Thanos are and make jokes about snapping somebody away. Like, it's crazy to have seen both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, it's fucked up. We were all born way too early.
Yeah. American Pie generation.
Yeah, we're from the generation where it's like, oh, you've never seen the movie where the guy fucked a pie? What are you, a loser?
I've still never seen
Hey, John, don't.
But Ryan, you're right though. Those characters are they have a ride, right? And the thing is we're 7-8 years into the DC universe. The closest I would say is maybe Jason Momoa's Aquaman, but that's, arguable. Like, I mean, the movie did really well, but I guess as a comic fan, it's got to be exciting to realize that can happen. But like, what do you think DC and WB needs to do to take those characters beyond your core three of, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and inject them into the social construct? And is Michael Keaton going to help, or does it even matter?
I think what they need to do to get those characters to stick as well as the Marvel characters is just, like I said earlier, like, just let them be those characters. Because, like, I tell people this all the time who argue about, like, oh, Superman's outdated. Superman is just a big blue Boy Scout. He's not relevant to the modern era. He's too kind. He's too this. He's too that. Like, if I could describe to you what a great modern Superman movie would be, it would be very similar to the Captain America movies, because at his core, Captain America is a very similar character.
Of course.
Yeah, he's from a different planet.
Those movies made me like when I watch Captain America, I become the most patriotic. I get a crew cut.
Yep.
And I stare at the flag.
Yep.
That's what I do.
But that's, I mean, like,
the US flag.
He's not, a soldier. He says truth, justice, and the American way, but that's the extent of, like, his outward patriotism. But in terms of just, like, he's that guy who, like, Superman is not a god. We need to ditch the Christ imagery.
Please,
we need to stop making him, like, always reminding people, like, he's an alien. He's not one of us.
Oh, please stop that. Like, just make him a good person.
The best versions of Superman have been the ones where, if you had to describe him with as few words as possible, it would just be, he's a friend. He's a guy who, yes, he has powers. Yes, he's from a different planet. He was raised here. He was raised by John and Martha Kent. He grew up in Smallville. He has friends. Martha. Jimmy Olsen needs to be in these movies because he humanizes Superman. He's his best friend. He takes his pictures. He tells the story of who he is with Lois Lane. And that is his circle of friends. They go out for beers together after they get done at the Daily Planet. Like, he is just a guy, and he wakes up every day and says, I love this place. I love my life. What can I do to make it better?
Yeah. You know what I love, by the way?
That's when I woke up this morning.
This is the third time I've thrown a question to John, and he's answered by telling us how to do Superman the right way. So we know where John's priorities are.
Like, if they could, because here's the thing, like, they've gotten Batman
DC
right.
make
I
the
don't
Flash
know how they
better.
screwed it up with Affleck, but they've gotten it right before, at least a few times. Like, they can do Batman. And you look at, like, Wonder Woman was solid. They could do better, but, like, cool. It is what it is. It's fine. Onward and upward with that. They've gotten the Flash right on TV. They've done, like, each of these characters, whether it's been animated or TV or movie, like, you can get, like, they know how to do it, but they're afraid to. And I think if they just, like, completely just bought into their own stuff and let it shine, there's no reason that they couldn't be as big as Marvel's stuff.
Ryan, same question.
I think I'm going to say what I said back at the our Snyderverse roundtable. And I think that what DC needs with their characters is they just need to put some heart into it. Mm-hmm. It's less Flash, like, not the Flash, but just like less Flash bangs and pops. Like, how cool of a scene can you make? They need to start making you care and love about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
just by giving them like a good story, a good personality. I mean, take Spider-Verse. Nobody knew who Miles was. The comic book readers did. Nobody knew who Miles was, and now Miles Morales has become a household name.
Yeah, he's getting
It was the first thing that they teased during that thing for the whole, like, here's what we have for PlayStation 5. And the first thing they show is Miles Morales.
Yep.
And everybody loses their minds.
And you know what?
Everyone loves it now.
And you know what? You know what? It doesn't take a whole movie or a whole series of movies or a trilogy to do what I'm asking DC to do, because I didn't know much about Miles Morales. I didn't know about the Spider-Verse.
But that world was so bright and vivid and colorful and
One
relatable.
minute into that movie, I knew everything that I needed to know in order to be completely lost in that universe.
Yeah, humor, soundtrack.
Do you know what it is?
Visuals.
Do you know why? I can tell you exactly what that is. And it's not just even the visuals.
It's Sony Pictures' own Ryan Doell.
It's Ryan Doell himself.
Oscar award winner.
Here he is.
I'm just going to be a shill here for a moment. But what it is was that moment when you first see Miles and he's sitting there, he's drawing, he's got his headset on, his Sony headset on, he's singing Sunflower.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it's his dad saying, get ready for school. And then you see him and how he interacts with his dad, his mom, and just like Ghostbusters in those first 5 minutes when you get to meet everybody, you know exactly who everybody is.
Yeah.
That's good
and
storytelling.
You care about Miles.
Abby.
It's a bright color. I will answer your question.
You know
What
what I'm
I
going to... No.
Oh.
What I'm saying is, you can make the same argument for the first 2 minutes of Guardians of the Galaxy, where with very little dialogue or exposition, you know everything you need
are
to know
latched
about.
on to Peter Quill.
Yep.
You understand like his humanity and his goodness, and his relationship with his mother has just ended, and he's completely lost and alone, and now he's being brought up into space, and so you're right there with him. And excuse me, when it comes to world building and opening up and making that environment so unforgettable, I think that that's what DC needs to do in order to make these movies better. I think that the world needs to be, if your world is so like unforgiving and cold, then like who wants to save it? Like where there's no motivation behind like even the very act of being a superhero and saving the day, because it's like, fuck this place anyway. Everything is so drab and like, ugh. So I would like to see some life and some better character building and some more humor. Specifically, because I think that would work with, like you were saying, John, with taking Superman and making him a little bit more human in that, like, he's a good person. He's not godlike. Like, put Batman as in a humorous way, like playing off like, oh, so he's a goody two shoes kind of a thing, which worked really well for Marvel.
Yeah,
so copy Marvel in a good way.
Like if you watch any of times in cartoons or any of the other stuff where Superman has interacted with Batman, there's been times where they butted heads, they've disagreed with how each other does things, how they've been buddy and on the same page about stuff, but it's always done in a way where you feel connected to both of them, given how different they are.
Yeah.
And you also, like, there are moments that are really funny and there are moments that are really touching. Like, they're people. You connect to them like any other character in any other story, superhero or not.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, I love Smallville. I grew up with Smallville. That was my first real introduction to Clark Kent and Superman and that whole world of characters. I would never say like, this is flawless, this is a great show, because there's a lot of it that, it was the first real long form. It was 10 seasons. It was one of the first shows of its kind. And now we have Arrow and Flash and Supergirl, and they're all doing that kind of thing better. Yeah. So like all of those shows, all the current CW shows, they've taken what Smallville started and they're running with it, pun intended with the Flash, I guess. But like one of my favorite things is like you watch that first episode of Smallville, and the first time that you see Clark Kent when he's, Tom Welling and he's the main character, he wakes up and he's getting ready for school and he walks into the kitchen and he grabs the jar of like the actual glass milkman jar of milk out of the fridge and goes to drink out of it without pouring it in a glass. And his mom walks in and is like, Clark, what are you doing? You just drink out of the jar? Where'd you get your manners? And he just looks at her. He's like, on a farm, because he's Clark Kent. They live on a farm. Like in that moment, immediately you're like, oh God, like I know this guy, Clark Kent. He's a teenager. But he's also Clark Kent, and it humanizes him. And that whole show is about showing him finding his heroic identity juxtaposed against his parents, his friends, Lex Luthor, all that stuff. I don't think we need Smallville the movie, but I want to know Clark Kent as a human. I want to know Bruce Wayne as a human. I want to know, like, all of these characters are people. And if you're not telling their story as a person, their story as a hero, and all of the big moments and huge events and things that they do while they're in costume are going to fall flat. They might look cool, but they're not going to matter.
I agree. That's some good stuff. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up here. I think this is some good conversation. Obviously, it's going to be ongoing, right? So as far as DC goes, we're going to have new trailers. Wonder Woman's going to come out at some point this year. Let's do final thoughts. Ryan, I'll throw to you first. I guess I really haven't spoke on it too much. So I've been kind of playing host here. I've got opinions too, you know. Not good ones, but opinions nonetheless. I'm personally could kind of care less about The Flash or a Flashpoint movie, but getting the opportunity to see Michael Keaton again as Batman, you know, it's not like, you know, with Ghostbusters, to kind of bring it to something relatable, Ernie Hudson is going to kill it as Winston, obviously. He always does. Bill Murray, his acting style has gotten a little bit less, he's a little bit drier and he's a little bit more monotone than he was in his early days. And Dan Aykroyd, who knows? We don't know what we're going to get with those guys because they're not, Dan Aykroyd's really not even a working actor anymore. He just maybe does, one or two appearances every couple of years. Bill and Ted, same thing, revisiting those characters so long. Michael Keaton has had an incredible career, and over the past 5-10 years has had a really nice resurgence. Birdman is an awesome movie. He was awesome in Spider-Man Homecoming. So, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to get back into that mode because, let's face it, his version of Bruce Wayne was very Michael Keaton. He didn't stray too far from himself. Mm-hmm. So I'm personally very excited to see. I don't care. I like multiple versions of Batman because if you read there's always multiple versions of all sorts of comic characters, and there's always one-offs and crossover events and multiverses and all sorts of stuff. So if they're going to replicate that on screen, I'm really, really excited. My only hope is that maybe it spins off into some sort of solo movie for Michael Keaton. I do not want Tim Burton to direct it. I don't believe that he will give it what it needs. I think maybe a more young, hungry director who has a deep affinity for Batman and specifically the original Batman movies would be the better choice. Mm-hmm. But personally, I'm very excited, and this is about the only thing that was going to get me excited for the Flashpoint movie because otherwise, I really just don't. I don't care. I didn't even think Ezra Miller was all that great in Justice League. I thought Shazam was better. Right, that dude it's more charming, and there's more meat on the bone. Mm-hmm. I thought, Ezra Miller kind of felt like a little bit of second-rate Tom Holland to me. But that's just me. So Ryan, what overall, what are your final thoughts on the things we've been talking about?
Well, this is clearly my Ghostbusters 2016. I sound like every dude on the internet at that time because, you know what? A trailer hasn't come out and I'm already hating on it. So I know that's the headspace I'm in right now. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I'm completely wrong. I hope everything that I've said negatively today about this, I hope I'm so wrong. Negative. And then, it's still dumb. And you know what? And lucky for me, I still have comics, and you guys all can have comics too. Go support your local comic store. They're all independent. They're all they should all starting to open. Comics are shipping again. So please go help your comic stores. Some have closed during this pandemic, and the ones that are open, let's do our best to keep them open and supporting them the best we can.
Amen.
Abigail.
Brother. I love a comeback. I love to see the McRib come back. I love when SNL is good, surprisingly. And I would love to see DC have a big turnaround moment and surprisingly just be have this movie be really good. And I'd love to see Michael Keaton have success with his return to the role as Batman. And I don't know that that's going to happen with the track record. But
I'm writing a note to myself.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I just picked up a pen and Abby looked like...
Okay, I thought there was going to be like... Okay.
Craig has notes.
I thought I was getting edited in the middle of this.
No, I'm doing a timestamp for myself.
Okay.
Getting graded.
Editing in microphone.
Okay. Cool. So...
Do you want the answer?
Yeah.
One of our guests coughed while you were talking, and I'm going to remove it.
Oh, okay.
But no one else is going to hear it because it's going to be gone. And Abby thought I was
you were
editing her out of the podcast.
I was like, can I not say Pizza Hut? Did I say Pizza Hut?
All right, keep going.
You know what? Let it keep it in. Everyone needs to know.
All right. Yeah, now I'm not going back.
Now it's fun.
The cough will stay.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is it'd be really cool to see DC as the underdog, kind of like have a really good film come out and have it starring Michael Keaton as Batman. And I don't know quite as much about the Flashpoint stuff as John and Ryan, but from what you're saying, it I don't know, it could make sense. Sounds like there's a lot kind of stacked against it, but
hey, you know what? Before we wrap up though, we didn't even really touch on the fact. How do you guys feel about that Flashpoint? Where did these Jeffrey Dean Morgan, where did those rumors even originate from? Is that just something the internet made up?
No. Well, as far as the actual rumors that's what was like, that they were going to make that film, they've always teased a Flashpoint movie. And one of the biggest things that happens in the story of Flashpoint is you see that Thomas Wayne is Batman. Like, that is the big, like, whoa, this world is different moment. Mm-hmm. And because Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Thomas Wayne in Batman versus Superman, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He'll be Batman.
Yeah, it was like a very high profile assumption.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so stupid, though. He's in that movie for 5 seconds, and then you know what happens.
Well,
the pearls
Thomas
go
Wayne
flying.
is in every Batman story for 5 seconds. So
I had the best idea for a cosplay today, Abby.
Yeah, no, I literally researched it. It hasn't been done before, but to be like Martha Wayne as she's being shot and falling with like a pearl necklace so that it's like rigged with a clear plastic strand that's like so that you can like lift your arm up and the necklace can always be like just being shot apart as you fall back for
like
every
you're
picture.
Like falling in slow motion.
In every photo, it looks like you've just been shot.
Yeah.
So that's our plan.
Well, it's the only good thing Martha Wayne ever did for the world.
There's not a lot of Martha Wayne cosplay.
I mean, she also gave birth to Bruce.
Right?
Supposedly. All right, John, final thoughts.
You know, I am always like, I'm a incurable optimist. So I have gone into every DC movie saying, you know, I hope this is the one where you walk out and you're just like, oh yeah, okay. I feel like we got something good going. Every film has had something that it's had moments where I'm just like, yeah, okay, that was good. I like that. That looked cool. The closest that we've gotten, like I said, is probably Wonder Woman and Shazam. But again, I didn't even mention Shazam when we first started talking. So as much as it sucks to admit, because he's actually one of my favorite characters, I think for me, it's so hard to invest in any of these films because there's always that looming, like, but the universe sucks so far. And even if they come out and they make a good solo Batman or Flash or Shazam or whatever, it's like, yeah, but what does that mean for the rest of this world? Because DC came out the gate with like, let's build the universe. Let's introduce everybody in the first 3 or 4 movies. And then we'll worry about like getting into who they are. And now that they're trying to get into who they are, well, the world building didn't really come together. So I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. And my hope for Flashpoint is, regardless of if it is a perfect adaptation of the comic or if everything that was in the original story makes it into the movie, I just want it to be something that when we come out of it, whether Michael Keaton's a part of it or Ezra Miller is Barry, whatever, like by the time the Flash movie ends, by the time Flashpoint is over, I can walk out of the theater and say, okay, this feels like a place where we can, from here, build the DC universe in a good way. It might not necessarily be a classical kind of way where you can expect the next time you see the Justice League, it'll be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter. It might not be the stereotypical, like, this is the status quo of the DC universe, but it'll be something that, for whatever it is, it feels good. Maybe Batgirl's on the Justice League. Who knows? Like, whatever they do, just do it well. Let us get to love these characters. Let them be who they are, because that is going to be the thing that makes people go, okay, I like DC. Yep. I like Batgirl. I like that Michael Keaton is back, because it's not just for show and nostalgia. It's because this Michael Keaton means something, or this Bruce Wayne means something to this version of the DC universe. Don't bring Keaton back if he's not going to do anything other than be like, hey, I remember him from the last Batman.
I know. It's just like just bringing him back for that shot in the trailer where he's got the Flash by the collar and he's like, I'm Batman. Because you know that's going to happen.
Well, nobody was excited about a Flash movie until the rumor came out.
Right.
So
honestly, when they first said, oh, we're going to do a solo Flash movie, I was super excited. A lot of the directors and writers and people that were attached to it, they were all amazing, and all of them gave me confidence. The fact that, before we found out Ezra Miller had some serious issues, they talked about how he went to Grant Morrison, who has written some amazing comic books, and said, hey, man, I want this movie to get made. Will you help me? And they hashed it out together. All of that felt good. But the deeper we got into the release of DC movies and saw what they were going to be, it was just to me, it didn't feel like it was worth it. So if we can use this film to create something that feels worth investing in by the time it's over, that is, if I can have that, then I will be happy. If they go beyond that and they do even more, awesome. That's icing on the cake, cherry on top. But just make me feel like DC movies are going to be good, I guess. It is.
He said it.
Make DC good again.
He said it all. I don't think I could say anything else. Well, listen, we're going to have a lot to unpack over the next couple months. And I'm the most excited thing I am right now in the DC universe is the Suicide Squad trailer. I'm very intrigued by whatever that movie is going to be. We're going to wrap it up here. Before we do, let's let everybody know what we got going on with Yes Have Some Podcast. Stay tuned to our page for updates on the eBay hang. We've been doing those every Friday night. Tons of fun, lots of good chatter. We get on eBay, we virtual toy hunt. It's a great time. Ryan and John, I'm sure they agree. I'm speaking for them
wholeheartedly.
Ryan told me that the YouTube chat is way better.
It's wilder out there.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's true. It's way more fun, but I didn't want you to tell anybody because then people will come.
Now it's gonna,
now it's gonna be flooded.
I see. It's not cool. Actually, guys, don't even bother.
We are launching our new merch store, new shirts, new designs. If you want to know more about that, the best way to find out all of our latest updates is in our official Facebook group. That is kind of that's like home base for Yes Have Some Podcast. And if you're not part of that, which is Yes Have Some Group Therapy on Facebook, Abigail,
then what are you even doing with your life? You should join, log into Facebook, search for Yes Have Some Podcast Group Therapy. You'll find our closed group.
Most people know how to get to a Facebook group.
Yeah.
They just need the name.
Part of, Okay, so you find your computer and then you turn it on. No, it's very easy. Just search for Yes Have Some Podcast Group Therapy. You'll find it. Ask to join. It's closed. We keep it closed because we keep the content quality. Ryan, you help us with that as an excellent admin, so thank you. The rule is no memes, literally ever.
No memes.
I'll just let you speak on it.
Yeah, Ryan, what is your personal feeling on memes?
How do you feel about memes?
I think they don't bring any kind of I don't think they bring any conversation. Because that's what we like to have in group therapy.
Amen.
I think they're just cheap pops. No cheap pops, please. If there are
plenty of cheap heat, though.
Related,
cheap heat is fine.
Corn
we
pop.
come in there.
Cheap heat.
Cheap heat is fine. You can come in there with your hot takes and your
blow a little steam off.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Late night.
Heat, a
little salt.
But if your meme is Yes Have Some related, let's say it's like Abby, and it's just oh, that moment when you don't let her buy something, right, or something, put that on there. Or if I think your meme sucks, I'm just gonna take it down.
Yeah. Do you guys know how many times a week
sweet meme tea?
Ryan will message me about 6 times a week. Should I ban this guy?
I love that.
It'll be like something. Some guy will be like, somebody will be like, what do you guys think of the new Super 7 Ninja Turtles? Ryan will be like, oh, dude, what a dumb question. Should I ban him? Hey, by the way, we need a T-shirt that's like that big bold font, and it says it says like cheap heat. There's a check mark, and it says cheap pops, and it has an X through it.
I like
that. Is
that.
YHS.
Yeah.
I like that. YHS rules.
So yeah, definitely join group therapy. We have a ton of fun in there. We talk a lot of toys, and there's a lot going on with toys. Let's face it. And then we got some cool stuff. We're lining up some cool guests for Yes Have Some in the next couple weeks. New Patreon bonus content. Going to drop a bonus episode this weekend. So if you're not part of the Patreon, go to patreon.com/yeshavesome. That free month is about to run out. Thank you so much to all of our Patreon supporters. We appreciate it. And also YouTube. I'm working on some new YouTube stuff. Got some ideas. Me and Ryan are collabing on some cool Batman content.
New things popping up.
Some no cheap pops for the Batman toy lines.
No, you know what I'm referencing.
What?
Pops. Yeah. Funko Pops.
Abby's a social media influencer.
Yeah. I got something I'm going to review. I'm really excited.
What is it?
It's a Captain America popcorn maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in our kitchen.
I'm going to be reviewing that.
That's
I can't
amazing.
wait.
Nothing's more American than
You know
making
how
popcorn.
he makes his popcorn.
I'm just going to do Thor impressions the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to need the Tesseract if you want to use that popcorn maker.
Whose popcorn is this?
Oh, this is awful. Well, cool. I think we've said everything we can say. John, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Jacob Walsh will be back next week.
Yes.
And here's how Jake operates.
I want to call Jake after this and talk to him about the Twister news.
Oh, yeah. They're going to reboot Twister. We'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about it later. Okay.
Jake is going to call, and this is what's going to happen. Jake had to go out of town. I was like, well, we're going to still podcast. Is that cool? Yeah, totally. Awesome. We're going to talk about DC. He's like, fine, fuck it. I don't even want to be there. He's going to call me and be like, I was so annoyed that you guys podcasted without me. I know that's going to happen. I'm going to be like, well.
I was annoyed that you even had a conversation with Jake that I wasn't involved in before this episode.
Well, if you listen to the whole episode, you already heard that conversation.
Yeah.
Ryan Doell, John Yurcaba, thank you so much for joining us. John, plug your art.
Yeah. If you guys want to keep up with what I'm up to and what I'm creating and what I'm working on, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Both of those are at John Yurcaba 4, like the number 4, all one word. And you check me out, see what I'm drawing. I have started doing art auctions. A lot of that money is going to different funds and charities and stuff for some of the situations that are going on in the world. And I'm also always just, posting things for fun. I'm working on some cool designs for you guys. So got a lot going on. And, and I'm excited to show that to everybody.
Very cool. Ryan, do you have anything to plug?
No, just join group therapy, like and subscribe to on YouTube. And that's it. I watch every movie I make at Sony.
Yeah.
There you go.
Support your local comic book shop.
There you go. Maybe one day, Ryan.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I got a recommendation for anybody who's listening to this and is hearing us say like DC is worth investing in, and but obviously they're not getting that satisfaction from the movies, and maybe the TV shows aren't their thing because they do inject a little bit more soap opera into things. If I could make one comic book recommendation, go and find the book. It's literally just called Justice. It's from DC. It's called Justice. It's written and illustrated by Alex Ross and Jim Krueger. You might recognize Alex Ross's work. He did the painted opening for Spider-Man 2, and he's done a lot of other really popular comic book related work. But that is literally the whole DC universe, the Justice League, 12 issues, and it's amazing. Like literally that is what DC films should be.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing story. So that's my one recommendation for if you wanted to get into DC and see what it could be.
There's another 12-issue series from DC that a lot of people don't know about. It's called Watchmen, and I would recommend everybody read that as well. Actually, if you haven't watched Watchmen on HBO, it's fucking awesome.
That shit's amazing.
It's very good.
Yeah, you should watch that, everybody.
It's very
more impactful and relevant than ever. We're going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us. Have some podcast. Yeah. We'll see you on the internet. Subscribe. Leave it an iTunes review.
Log into Facebook.
We're not doing that again. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all. Love you.
Yeah.
Love you.